All right, we're a couple minutes in. We have some people logged in. Shall we go ahead and
Hello.
dive in? Welcome to Route Building 101. If you're with us right now in the present time, welcome. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, everybody wave and say hi to YouTube.
Hey, YouTube.
What's up, YouTube? What's up, everybody in here? In
But
the house?
yeah, today we're talking about route building, which can be an intimidating factor for people hopping on bikes for the first time. It can also be an intimidating factor for people who've been riding bikes for a really long time. It's like, just how do you go play? Where do you go? Jasmine, I mean, at the shop, it's anytime you rent a bike, I feel like people are always asking you, where should we go? How should we get there?
Definitely. My biggest, head to the beach is the best first place to go. But how are you gonna go?
Exactly. Even
Have
then,
to
it's
let
like
them know.
yeah, there are a bunch of different ways to just do something as simple as cruise down to the beach. So yeah, today we're hopefully going to be able to give you some insight into some tools that you can use to build your own routes, or some tools you can use to find routes that other people are doing, and find something that like fits your lifestyle, fits your riding style, and just gets you where you want to go. So there are like three different kind of main categories of routes that all require sort of different ways of thinking about it. So first, you can just be going on a recreational route. It's a Sunday afternoon. You just want to get out on your bike and enjoy the sights, enjoy the weather, whatever that is. There's another kind of route of like, you really want to get in some miles for fitness. You might intentionally make that route a little bit harder than a recreational route, or you might be trying to hit some intervals or some specific elevation. So you might approach building that route differently. And then last is commuting, and that's an altogether third way where you're really using a bicycle as transportation. So diving into each of those, like recreationally, I think that some of the main important things that I keep in mind for a recreational ride are like the scenery is important. I don't want to be just riding down some like boring streets and crowded alleys or anything like that. You want to make sure it's safe. I don't want to be stressed out about like heavy traffic or cars coming into me, or even tons of pedestrians is the thing to keep in mind as well if you're riding like a multi-use trail or something on the beach. And the third thing that I keep in mind is elevation gain, because if it's a lazy Sunday ride, I don't want to be like climbing up Signal Hill or something like that. There are more flat, easy ways to go. But Jazz and Justin, what are like the things that I guess you keep in mind for recreational rides as well?
I don't know. I definitely keep it easy. Yeah. Keep it fun. Recreational usually includes like one or two other people. And then, like I would just keep it to what's local, what's nice around me. What about you, Justin?
I would say similarly, just the scenery, having a good energy as far as like, is there stuff to do while we're riding? So I often look for like parks. I look for spots to stop and eat. So yeah, whenever I'm out on a recreational ride, a lot of times my recreational ride will be a lot longer. It'll take up a bigger portion of the day because, like you're saying, it's just a lazy Sunday or lazy Saturday. I'm not really looking to accomplish anything. So I leave myself open for more hours, you know what I mean, to just kind of hang out versus if I was doing, a commute. Obviously, I need to get to where I need to get, and everything else is just kind of, recreation is just hours of fun.
Yeah. And you're diving into more of, we're going to explore these in a little bit more depth later. So Justin has a lot of tips on how to craft the perfect recreational route. Yeah, the next one is fitness. But yeah, for a fitness route building, you are probably intentionally going to have more distance than you might do in recreation, or at least doing more distance faster. And you might intentionally have some hill climbs in there. You're going to put some elevation gain. And the biggest thing that I try to avoid with fitness rides is like a bunch of stop signs or a bunch of stoplights. So where a recreational ride, you might not really care. You're cruising up to intersections. You're just having a good time. If you're really trying to like keep your heart rate up and, intentionally build some fitness, it can get super annoying to have a whole bunch of stoplights. in a row. And so some of the route building apps that we're going to look at will actually show you where stoplights are, and some of them won't. So when you're keeping that in mind. And the third is commuting. And that's where literally your bike is just transportation. Maybe you're replacing your car. Maybe you just try and bike commute once or twice a week or something like that. Jasmine, you really have the most experience, I think, of the three of us with bike commuting. You're commuting by your bike and public transportation like every single day.
Yeah, I do. And it's my choice. I honestly love it. But I think I've been without a car for almost 4 years now. And there was like a little bit of a time when I had a car, but it just didn't work out. So I do commute quite a bit. My main commute is maybe like 4 miles, but in the future, I mean, in the past, I've commuted as far as like 23 miles one way a day, which was beautiful. And even then, before I knew the route that I preferred, it took me a few times to find the one that really worked for me. I mean, there was a moment in time, I think I'm pretty loyal to like Google Maps, but there was a time when it didn't update to regular bike routing. Now they offer it, but
right.
Yeah, it takes a few times to kind of figure out like what streets you're really comfortable on, like how much traffic, and then the timing of the traffic too, you know, is definitely different at 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. So those things are always considerable in finding a route that works for you for full-time commuters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, again, Jasmine is like the resident expert on commuting. So we'll dive into each of those. She's actually probably the resident expert on like building a fitness ride too. So I don't know what I'm doing talking.
I'll show y'all how to do it all.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll dive into that in a little bit. So we kind of mentioned a few of these already. Like obviously there are mapping applications like Google Maps or Apple Maps if you are on an iPhone. And I don't know, I don't really use Apple Maps very much, but some people do. Those are like super easy. Just plug in your destination. You do it all the time in a car probably already, and just hit go. They have the downside of being a little less customizable. But then there are some other ones, like even Strava has a route building app built in. RideWithGPS. Another one I didn't put on this slide, but we'll talk about later, is RideSpot. There are tons of options, too many options, honestly, in my opinion. And as you start to build routes, you'll kind of have the natural ones that you gravitate toward, the ones that have the features that you like. But really quickly, we'll kind of blast through all of them. And I built out these slides of the things that I think, but Justin and Jasmine, jump in and tell me what I missed. Talk about what you love about each of these or hate about each of them. But Google Maps is honestly like, the first thing, that the most common mapping application that I use on my phone, I think all of the time, because it's between a car, you can choose pedestrian, it has a lot of different features. It's simple. Everyone's pretty familiar with it. If you aren't, congratulations, you've somehow avoided Google in your life, which is, I don't know, an accomplishment. But I think some of the cons are just the limitations of it. It's really best for like plugging in a destination and hitting go. And if you have to do too much finessing or like avoiding certain streets and stuff, it doesn't really offer a ton of that customizability that maybe some of the other options have. Justin, Jasmine, thumbs up on Google Maps, thumbs down on Google Maps, thumbs sideways. Justin's muted, but he looks like he's really enthusiastic.
Looks like he likes it.
It had a thumbs up for sure. So he's trying.
Can you hear him?
Trying. Maybe he's not muted. Now we can hear him.
Yeah, I don't know why this always does it. It always mutes me on my computer and on the app. So
he's ready.
But yeah, I was going to say, yes, I would say a downside for me would be it's not, I don't know, and maybe it's just me, but can you drop a pin with Google Maps the way that you can with Apple? Okay, well then that's just me not knowing. Never mind, it's fabulous.
So I think that's one of the newer things.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
I don't think it's a pin. Maybe it is a pin, but yeah, you're able to take locations through just dropping a pin or sharing your locations.
Okay.
That's like
That's
the other thing I really like about that's Apple Maps, but what I really like about Google Maps is how accurate it is. And I don't think it totally inclined to cyclists necessarily, but I think
Right.
that now this new app, this new feature to have the bike routing is super useful for me, and it'll give me a couple of options too to which route I want. But I have before had really dangerous like streets. Maybe this is a good example. 7th Street is definitely not a preferred street for cyclists, but Google
Mhm.
Maps has definitely like routed me down 7th Street. Even for a block, I wouldn't take 7th Street, but
Oh, wow.
the street after it is 8th Street, which is like a one-way street, which I would always take to get to the Pizzanista that was on 7th Street at the time when I was working Maritime. So stuff like that, you know, like just because it's located right on a street that's relatively busy, I would never take that street. But that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. It's not necessarily as accurate or inclined to cyclists, but I see them moving forward to offering features for cycling routes, which is really tight to me.
Yeah.
I was just going to add that's a really good point for anybody who is like new to route building. What Jazz said is like just because it tells you to go down 7th Street does not mean you need to go down 7th
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah.
Sometimes it will give you an option to pick a different route on the left side, or sometimes even with your finger, you can select a different road and it'll try to, but like Jazz said, it'll
Yeah.
send you down a road that's paved, but just because it's a road does not mean it's safe for bikes. So
Yeah.
definitely you want to look into that whenever you're
Yeah.
looking for the route to pick.
Stay aware, use your brain. If Google Maps tells you to do something that your gut says is dangerous, don't do it. Find another way to go. It'll update. That's a cool feature, I guess. It's like,
Yes.
I think that if we're moving forward, making upgrades to something like Google Maps, which I think they have full capability of doing, is, you know, capacity to what the street is offering.
yeah,
You know, depending on the capacity for pedestrians or cars or other cyclists is like a thing, but it's hard for them to measure that view via like satellite.
totally. Yeah, it's like the heat mapping and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's switching. This is a screenshot of Apple Maps here, and it's similar. I think a couple of the things that Apple's right now is they just recently added cycling directions, and they're only available in a certain amount of cities across the United States. Fortunately, Los Angeles is one of them. So it's cool. We get to play with it. But I think they only have like 12 cities or something. So if you're not living in an area that's covered by Apple Maps cycling, unfortunately, this isn't going to help you. But if you do, I think that they offer a couple different selections where you can choose some toggles like avoid hills or avoid busy streets to kind of customize your route a little bit more than you can do in Google. And then depending on the ecosystem that you have, if you have AirPods or an Apple Watch or something like that, it can give you turn by turn directions straight from your wrist or straight into, you know, you can have one earbud in or something. Don't recommend riding with both earbuds in. But that kind of a user experience, obviously Apple, whether you love them or you hate them, they try and make an entire experience for you. And so they have made an experience with their Apple Maps, but it's still kind of limited. I don't know. Have either of you guys used it a ton?
I've never used it before.
Justin has never dove in.
I use it pretty often for like restaurants and stuff. I find it it's really valuable for me there. And it also like connects to Yelp or whatever.
Yeah.
I do really like this feature for my iPhone because maybe if I don't have full reception somewhere or the Google app is acting buggy as well, I'll use this as an alternative. But with pin dropping, I find it really useful as well as sharing locations. So like I'll be on a ride with the girls and we'll get separated because some people ride at a different rate than others. So regrouping is necessary and anything like that. And so I feel really confident in Apple Maps with it dropping a pin or a location, I think that that's really, really neat. But I definitely prefer Google if I had to choose out of the two, just for its accuracy. So I find it a little bit less accurate in some situations, but it's definitely my backup, my like go-to if one is not working. So
nice. And I'll do a little demo later of like, there are some specific things that like Apple Maps nails and Google Maps messes up, or vice versa, you know? So it's kind of, if you run into issues using one or the other, exactly what Jasmine is saying, of just being able to like, oh, let's see what the other one says. Maybe that'll get me, you know, maybe Apple won't route me down 7th Street this time.
Yeah, comparing is crucial in this sense, because you just don't really know how much is available, you know, and you wouldn't even know unless you experienced the alternative routes, like actually in person. Like, oh, I'm going to take this way instead. It seems like it's going to go the whole way, and you find out that that's better. So even in a draw for 3-year experience, this app and Google, like you kind of have relatively the right direction.
Yeah. So the next one is Strava. I don't have a ton of experience doing route building in Strava, but they do have an entire route builder where you can search for other people's routes. You can build your own routes. And then obviously Strava is the fitness tracking app and social, I guess, kind of like fitness social media. They're like really diving into that. That's what I use it for. Mainly, but I wanted to at least put it in here because it is one of the features that they really are pushing is their route building. And so I don't have a ton of experience myself, but do either of you guys?
Yes, I have a lot of experience with
There
this.
we go.
This feature is amazing. I think Strava is winning in this sense, and I've used it before in a couple of different ways. It'll give you access to everything that's around your location. And then it'll give you options to kind of decide which way to take and what kind of a day you're looking for. But you can also, there's like a drawing feature. If you choose to draw like maybe around in a mountain range, it'll kind of route you around to what's accessible. And I found some pretty like breathtaking routes this way via Strava. And so if you haven't already used it, I feel like you should just kind of like jump in and press around. It's still a little bit on the works, I believe. So I think like as it moves forward, it's going to be even better. But trust me, they're doing it right. Like I really, really enjoy this feature of Strava.
Oh, cool.
It changes the dynamic. It changes the experience for the athlete altogether. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Anybody's tuning in here and hasn't already tapped into what Strava has for route making, please do. It's so fun. Yeah.
Cool.
I second that. I definitely second that.
Is it part of their like summit pack? Is it a paid feature or can you access it free? Okay.
That's the only downside. Yeah.
That as you get into a few of these, like away from just Google Maps and Apple Maps, you to access a lot of the features that are really cool, you have to pay. There are a few options though that we're going to explore that give you quite a bit of workability without having to pay. But I don't know. I keep coming back to like sometimes it is just worth it if you are really riding a lot and you keep running into issues using other apps. Just pay a couple bucks and have a good option.
It's, honestly, Strava is about one of the only things that would truly be worth it. They really are. And I don't even use the paid version, and I get more than what I was even planning on using. I would say personally, I think the best option or the best feature is the when other people make their route and then you can like kind of race it in a sense. And then you get little medals. And I just think that is so fun. And it keeps people really engaged with the app because like, especially like for me, I found a lot of these raceable routes on my way to work. Like they were just a part of the city. And that's what's so cool about these routes is that you just turn on the app, you go for a joyride, and you look at your app a couple hours later, and you've done like 3 or 4 different competition routes. And now you know, like, oh my God, if I just ride this a little bit faster, I can kind of get my numbers up. And you become like a junkie for this stuff. You didn't even know that you wanted it. You're like, now you're like trying to do your best. Yes, like the beach path. That's a route that it's just the down path. And you see people flying down the path, and you're like, I wonder if they're trying to get, if they're trying to get in the daily top 10 or, it's a really cool feature. And I think that it's perfect for beginners. It's perfect for people that have a lot of experience and everybody in between.
Nice. Wow. Well, we are preaching the gospel of Strava here. I guess we're
right. It's winning. Like
another
Jazz.
one. Yeah, another one that competes quite a bit with Strava is RideWithGPS. They also have a similar subscription feature. They have a similar way to go through and build routes and search other routes and things like that. I have used RideWithGPS for a lot of longer routes that I'm building. For example, me and a couple of the pedal movement guys rode down to San Diego, and that was like, okay, that's going to be a long ride. Let's look at, we're going to try and put as much effort into the route as we can. And RideWithGPS's tools ended up totally working for me. It sounds like we could have done it in Strava. Sounds like we also could do it in other apps too. So again, I think that totally does just illustrate, as you start to get experience with this, you'll find the ones that you gravitate toward and that work for you. But yeah, RideWithGPS I put in here because I have quite a bit of experience with it and I really enjoy it. I'll show some comparisons of that later as well. And I'd be remiss to not mention RideSpot because we have some routes that we've built as pedal movement around Long Beach that are hosted on RideSpot. RideSpot is a great spot to, I've said spot so many times, I'm self-conscious of it now. RideSpot is a great spot to check out other people's routes. And that's one of the big features, is just looking in your area, like what rides are around here, and being able to kind of share a bunch of stuff like that. Because Strava also has those features, like how would you guys recommend that people, let's say someone hasn't dove in at all, they don't have a Strava, they've used Google Maps, but they don't have a RideSpot, they don't have RideWithGPS, like where do you even start? Because that can be really overwhelming for people.
I think the RideSpot's a great place to start. If you're customizing routes, I feel like it's a little bit rough for me to customize a route over RideSpot just because it takes so much clicking and it takes a little bit of time. But the thing that I do enjoy is that it's relatively like a Facebook for bike shops and other people to kind of interact based off of what's also around them, which is another feature that Strava offers. I prefer the Strava app because it's a little bit more inclined to easier usage. It's inclined for the user. This one is a little bit more challenging in that sense. It takes a lot of zooming in. It takes a lot of clicking, like I said. It's just true to a customizable app for routes, which is sometimes the preference for people. Personally, not mine, but
yeah.
I'm an avid Strava user.
Yeah, totally. I know. It's like I said, we're preaching the gospel of Strava, I guess. Everyone get on Strava. But
yeah, I've honestly never used RideSpot, but just from Jazz's description, it sounds like maybe RideSpot could possibly be more helpful if you have time to just kind of sit down and like take your time and click around. Yeah. And maybe Strava and everything else is just kind of on the go, impromptu trip. Would that maybe be a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's a good. I think I would say
I've never used it
are kind of like Google Maps is your Google Maps and Apple Maps are your plug and play, like point A to point B. I'm just going to follow these. And then if you start to encounter problems in those, like Strava might be your better one for like a really good weekend ride, or, like figuring out your route, your commuting route that you're going to do every single day or something like that. And then when you get into RideWithGPS and RideSpot, those are kind of like, okay, I'm running into this problem. Like, I don't know how to get across this part of town. Let me actually sit down and like figure this out. These are the more in-depth tools to be able to do that. The other one cool feature of RideSpot is that they have these ride cards that we have been talking about getting at Pedal Movement for a while. And so like, fingers crossed, I think maybe this spring, this is it. Jazz, I think this is it. We're going to make it happen. But these are these little physical cards that shops can have. And so if you go in and like rent a bike, or you're new to town, or you're just looking for something to do, you can literally grab one of these physical cards, scan it with your phone, and it'll pop up and just have the route already on your phone. And so those routes are only as good as the people who are uploading them. So you can kind of get hit or miss.
100%.
There's totally a way, like you can, like you can see the example on the screenshot is like this route is rated a classic, and that's like enough people have ridden it and have given it a thumbs up that hopefully it's dialed. And if we have these ride cards at the shop, we will obviously we're putting the care and work into making sure that you're going to have a good time on any of these routes that you select.
Yeah, I think so. For RideSpot, I believe, well, in my experience, it's nicer for shorter rides, like local rides. If you're planning a ride as far as like maybe 50 miles to 100 miles, it gets a little bit tricky. And so I preferred this. They recommended me to use this app for planning out powwow a couple of years ago.
Oh.
And I just scratched it. I was like, no. I just ended up using Google. We initially wanted to upload the routes so that people could access the murals later on, but it just was a little bit tricky. I just scratched it and went to Google and typed in all of the locations. So I'm also preaching to Google too, because they give you so many options to connect locations. In this sense, I don't feel that this app really does that, which makes it a little bit hard to plan.
Yeah, I think you're totally illustrating the like, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, and like that'll be the tool that you end up using. If you just want to scan a route card, not think about it, and go for a ride, RideSpot has a bunch of those. If you want more customization, maybe it's not the best option.
Yeah,
but cool. I did just before we got on this, we stole a screenshot of Jasmine's commute from LA down to Long Beach. We kept it zoomed out so you can't tell her exact address, but yeah, if you just want to talk through, like, I mean, this is an impressive commute route. First of all, not that many people are riding 28 miles for their commute.
Right.
But some of the concepts that you're going to apply to a route that's this long, someone could also take and apply to their 2-mile commute or a 10-mile commute. Right. So yeah, if you can just like, I mean, looking at this and just speaking about your experience, what should people be thinking about for building a commuting route?
So when you think about moving from this far, you want to kind of break it down into sections. Obviously, my main part of this ride is LA River, and I use a lot of the river paths to my advantage, even before I use this commute as my main commute. The next thing that comes to my mind with this route is the kind of obstacles that you would come into. But the first thing that I do is kind of just route myself via Google Maps to the LA River. Now, the unfortunate part of LA is that it's not very safe for cyclists. So in this sense, we're going through a lot of industrial area and everything that the river has to offer too. So you're talking about maybe animals or homeless or other options of obstacle.
Yeah, totally.
So there's sections of this route that are a little bit scarier than others due to traffic, due to the area that it's in. And so I typically just break it down into sections. So the first section is getting from my house to the LA River, because from there on, it's relatively in the clear. You're going to be on the river trail. So yeah, right around there.
Here, and then you kind of, I guess here too.
And then you just kind of like take it all the way. But there's other parts. The LA River gets really, really long. So we kind of break it up into sections too. There's maybe a halfway point in Paramount or like north side Long Beach, where you see maybe it's like right before Del Amo, you see Home Depot, and that's how you know you're maybe like halfway through the river. So when you're thinking of longer routes like this, you definitely want to make sure that you have like points of halfway there or quarter way there, and then also your mileage matters too. Here, I don't know what is it, like 28 miles.
Yeah,
well, most of it is the river is maybe like 20 miles, and in between is give or take like 5 or 6 miles. So that's where I start. I always figure out my main way or the longest part of my route, and then I route myself to the starting point of
Right.
that point. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? And then
exactly.
you kind of go with experience, and it's a huge leap, especially as we move forward into like welcoming more females into this culture. This is a really intimidating route, and I wouldn't recommend anybody doing it alone for the first time.
Yeah.
I didn't do it alone
Sure.
for the first time. I've had a bunch of other experiences on the LA River with a group of people. So go in groups at first is one of my recommendations. Definitely look at something like this. Is cool to just see how far you're going or how far you went, which I really value Strava for that, because it kind of gives me full on perspective of how much ground I covered. So you just kind of want to gain perspective. You want to gain experience, and you want to be as safe as possible when you're commuting on something like this, because even though you have the route down, there's going to be other obstacles. So just kind
Totally.
of be prepared for anything. If you're going this far, obviously, like, have a flat repair kit. You want to definitely take
Right.
2 tubes instead of 1. You want to have 2 CO2. You want to make sure that if something were to happen, you can get up and keep going. In this scenario, I'm definitely on my way to work, so I don't have very much time to
Yeah.
fiddle around with a flat. So even that's something that you want to consider as well too. Are you in a position where if you do get a flat tire, you're going to change it in a timely manner? If not, you want to definitely take advantage of your friends and see who's the most experienced then. Another thing I consider in this route, something this big, is if something were to happen, what is your escape route? I know that the blue line runs pretty parallel to the LA River. You want to make sure, even in that sense, if you were to end up in Signal Hill, or if you were in Bell Gardens, like, what's the fastest way to keep you going? So those are types of things that you just kind of want to think about. You want to think about the future and the present, because anything could happen to anybody on any bike. So
Totally.
that's something you just want to think about. Those things, just think, okay, how am I going to get there, and am I going to get there safe? What if something happens, So
Yeah.
yeah.
You mentioned something too of like that going with other people and learning your way by following others is like one of the best ways that you can do to get familiar. You don't have to on day one craft a route like this, and like there will be sections that you've ridden before that you're comfortable with, and there'll be sections you don't know, and that's where you can kind of follow people through and ask. A bunch of my favorite rides have been from asking people and being like, hey, can I follow you through this section? Like even learning how to commute, a lot of it was learning little tricks and like, if you turn on this street instead of this next street, it's actually a little bit easier for you.
No, I was saying I really appreciate what you said about like making sure to have like kind of an escape route, an escape plan, because if you've ever had a flat out in the middle of nowhere in an unfamiliar region, it is good to know, okay, I'm near, like say you get a flat on the riverbed, it's good to know like, okay, I have an exit off the path coming up, and there's a bike, maybe a bike shop or even just a bus stop that's right off of here. Because yeah, if you get a flat and you're walking alone on the bike path, the LA River path at night, I mean it's not a great feeling. So
Yeah.
it is good to have.
It's not at all.
Yeah. So it's good to have a backup plan, and then when you have that confidence, I think that that's gonna totally change your outlook on taking these adventures.
Yeah. And Jasmine, you have quite a bit of experience too, like linking public transit into your bike rides, especially with commuting. Like maybe that's not what you want to do on a Sunday. You want to spend as much time on the bike as possible. But if you did this ride all the way down to work and then you're like, I don't want to ride 28 miles back home. What are some tips for people like integrating things like metro and buses into their commuting life?
So before I was working in Long Beach, I would commute from Orange County up into Los Angeles with Metrolink. But when you're commuting down towards the beach, OC doesn't really offer that much transit. So, I mean, even then, when the Blue Line was getting worked on and they were adding a whole bunch of updates, you would still have to connect a bus but we would just ride our bikes. So another thing that Google offers is all types of transit information. And I also have another app. If anybody's interested, I have a transit app that's super accurate. It's called Move It app. When the Blue Line was under construction, I would use my Move It app to connect the buses to the trains. And so, I mean, I can send you guys a bunch of information on that. I have a passion for transit. I don't know. It's kind of romantic to me, I guess. But I really enjoy being able to kind of see the community based off of where the transit takes you, because, you know, it's going to take you through the most parts of LA where everybody needs to move. So, I mean, in COVID, it's a little bit eerie right now, but
for sure.
Everything's relatively safe. I've been commuting via Blue Line for the whole time, a year now that we've been doing COVID. So, I mean, at your own discretion, obviously, and I'm encouraging everybody to be as safe as possible. But if you wanted to know anything about transit or times or train times for Metro, Google Maps offers all of that. Google does in general, so just Google it.
Nice. I love it. Or ask Jasmine. Google it or ask Jasmine. Those are
feel free, please hit me up.
Those are your only two options.
Nice. Okay, switching gears from commuting into just recreation. And Justin, I would call you the king of a recreational ride. Like, Justin can piece together the perfect, like, you'll have the best food, you'll have the best views, you'll have the best social time. We can't wait for post-COVID when Justin can lead us all on these kind of rides again, and we can throw a big party. But for the meantime, let's just dream about it a little bit, and maybe you can kind of talk us through some of these great recreational options in Long Beach.
Yeah. So I decided to take a little screen capture of a route that I would take quite often back whenever everything was open, and I would start at our Go Active LB hub downtown, and I would take it to Marina Pacifica, which has a really big farmers market on Sundays. And it's really just a great place to interact with the community. And like I said, you know, pre-COVID, and hopefully once everything clears up, we'll be back out there. So what I would do is I would usually use Google Maps. It's just the simplest way to go. And I would put in my coordinates. And if you notice, this route, the first route you're looking at, takes you along the beach path. Now, I put that as an option because that's the one that I would normally take. It's a lot more relaxing. You can go as fast or slow as you want since you're on the beach path and there's designated areas for bikes. You don't have to worry about traffic. About the only thing you really have to worry about are pedestrians not paying attention. I would say that's about the only thing you really need to worry about at the beach, is because people will walk across the bike path like you don't exist. And other times they'll just try to do this try to beat you across, even though you're riding like 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, and they're walking, dragging a cooler or something. So it's very important.
That's not safe.
No, not at all. So it is very important to, whenever you are on your recreational trip, there are other people that are in a recreational mindset too, whether they be on foot or, you know, anything else. Skateboards as well. Look out for, you know, solo skateboards. If somebody fell off and it's just sliding down, I've seen people have to dodge skateboards. So all of this stuff kind of goes into general bike etiquette, but it's also important that when you're in the recreational mindset to also be focused on this, because a lot of people get comfortable with being at the beach where it's like, nothing can go wrong. Everybody is here to relax. And it's like, well, when you relax is when you also ease up on some safety precautions too. So you still want to make sure to focus on safety. But as I said, once you take that route down the beach, then that's whenever you can make your way. Oh, there's a bridge that is very annoying to go over, but it is necessary to get over to the farmer's market. I would say that's the only point that a non-experienced rider might feel a little anxiety. There is a bike lane and it's not protected. It is designated just for bikes, but it's not protected. I hope that's something that they change in the years to come. But there's a good understanding that cars that are coming up that ramp, it's kind of a spiral ramp, so they're not going as fast as they could be. So whenever you're riding your bike, yeah. So when you're riding your bike up the ramp, or I'm sorry, up the bridge, you want to keep your eyes to the right and focus on who might be coming into the integrating into traffic from the ramp. So I would say outside of that situation, the ride over there is really chill. And this is the option you might want to take if you're not looking to stop and get anything to eat on the way. There is a spot by the pier that you can stop, and it kind of connects you onto 2nd Street, so you can get food and drinks. But otherwise, you can just keep it moving until you get to Marina Pacifica, where right across from the farmers market, there's a big shopping outlet center. So you can get plenty of food, do your shopping over there. And if you go a little bit further, you'll get to the Belmont Brewery. And again, good time, good food, drinks. They'll have live music sometimes. So this is all just integrated into a simple one little route down the beach, and you can get into all this fun. If you want to click to the next slide, this is the same start and finish point, but instead this takes you onto Broadway and onto 2nd Street. So just doing the same, essentially the same route, you experience a whole different side of Long Beach just by taking a couple blocks over. So now by taking Broadway, you're going to see a lot of the bars. You're going to see a lot of the restaurants that are in the downtown area, as well as the art district as you ride through. You're going to get to connect a lot more with, unfortunately, there's going to be, some traffic, but it's Broadway. They do have it blocked off, so you do have some safe riding options. But if you are new at riding, you might want to start with the beach first, just so that you can kind of have a much more quiet and relaxed ride. And then as you build up your confidence, you can hop onto the Broadway path. That'll take you down 2nd Street as well, where there is a lot of restaurants, a lot of, once you get into the Belmont Shore area, you're also going to have a lot of activities, a lot of art studios, and just sightseeing, just general sightseeing. So a lot of times for my friends that are not from Long Beach, but are comfortable on a bike, I often tell them to take this route because they're not always looking to just hang out at the beach. The beach is something you might do the first day, but I have friends that come, right, yeah, it's just that standard, like, okay, I'm at the beach, cool. But if you stay on 2nd Street and on Broadway, you really get that taste of Long Beach, the cultural, as well as all the different just art, the food, the music. And if you ride down Broadway on the right day or 2nd Street on the right day, there might be an outdoor event that you'll totally miss on the beach because you won't even know that it's going on. And vice versa. There's events that we as a company put on the beach that you might miss if you're on 2nd Street. So the beauty of Long Beach is that you can take 5 different routes to get to the same place and run into so many different things. Because there is also a route that Google Maps gave me that you could take a detour through 7th Street, which, like we said earlier, you don't want to drive on 7th Street. But if you would want to take a little peek at 7th Street via a safer road, like go up Orange Street or go up another street to get to Cambodia Town, beautiful area, awesome art, awesome food. Again, like that is what Long Beach is about. Yeah. And Jazz would know, she's rides everywhere. She also hosted the Powwow Art Ride. So this is another thing that you can really focus your journey around is, oh, I just want to see some art. Well, connect with us and we'll tell you about the Powwow Ride, or we'll tell you about the different murals that have been put up. And then you can base your ride just on that. And that is you can make that ride as short as you want, because the murals are spread throughout all of Long Beach. So all the way up to almost Compton, all the way down to the beach, it's beautiful. Yeah.
I really like these routes, Justin. Both of them are really great options. I think just to even access Belmont Shore or the experience of Broadway to 2nd Street is kind of a lot of really traditional Long Beach, like beach side. So yeah, I would really, one of the cards has to have both of these routes. Maybe like one side is one and then the other side is the Broadway to Second Street. I think that everybody should experience Long Beach through both of these routes. I think it's a really great representation of why Long Beach is, you know, one of the most bike friendly cities in America. So I enjoy these routes a lot. The Broadway to Second Street is probably the fastest accessible. And I feel like if a lot of our British Airways clients knew about it, they would take this way, because I think they just kind of inclined to just take the beach because that's the only way they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I think that totally goes back too to like depending on what your purpose is. You know, if this was your commute, you'd probably take the Broadway Second Street because you're looking for that to go straight. But if you're cruising, you can go on the beach. It's one of the beautiful things I think that happens with bikes instead of cars is that in cars you're almost always focused on like what's the most efficient way to get from point A to point B. And with a bike, there's, you know, you're already not going the fastest that you could be going, and so might as well take a couple extra minutes to make it.
Might as well go the scenic route.
Yeah,
Exactly. And like I was saying earlier, like knowing where like the parks are and knowing where like the little chill spots are is really going to help the whole, like say you get tired and you don't want to just stop in the middle of nowhere, know where a park is, know where, you know, a restaurant or a little rest stop is. There's so many options because you don't have to pull over a car. You don't have to get off of the freeway. This is like you literally like, if there's nowhere to go, you can just pick up your bike and walk up some stairs and then boom, there's civilization again. So being in a car versus being in a bike, whenever you're in a city like Long Beach, a bike will get you anywhere. I lived in Long Beach for rolling on about 6 or so years now and never bought a car. Just did not need to get one. And I've moved, and I've lived in all different parts of Long Beach. And as long as you're, you know, down to go for a ride, you'll find your way, you know. And I even moved to Gardena and still just did the commute on my bike or took the bus. So it's very, very important to know your options because you'll save yourself a lot of money and you'll meet some pretty interesting people.
nice. So for these last few minutes here, we're getting right up to the hour, but we wanted to kind of dive in and just show a little bit of hands-on with some of the problems you might run into with a couple of the different mapping applications. So this right here is Google Maps, as I'm sure I don't have to say. Most people are probably really familiar. And so we have up here the cycling option selected. We have it starting at the shop at pedal movement on First Street. And then just for this example, because something weird comes up, let's say we want to go to the Lions Lighthouse, which is right down here. You can either click on it or you can type it in. If you click on it as your destination, oops, God, of course, things are going to go wrong. We're going to start at work. You guys are in the way. I'm moving you. Go to the lighthouse via bike. It does this. It takes you over to Shoreline Village and then says to walk your bike across the ocean over to the lighthouse. And so kind of off the bat, it's like, all right, this is not, and then even the way that they're doing here, it's like there are quite a lot of little turns and stuff like that isn't maybe the way that I would take if I were heading down to the beach. Yeah. So already Google Maps kind of showing the limitations of some cycling specific, and you can go in and like you can drag all these little parts, but as you can see, it's shifting around like crazy. It isn't like the best way to really there we go. I'm going to go across and it doesn't really it's a little tough to work with sometimes. So I'm going to take that same example and just switch over to RideSpot. And so with RideSpot, we're going to go start at the shop, the same deal. And then I'm just going to click my next point is down here at the lighthouse. And now it takes me like a very natural one turn here. You go, this is actually really nice to kind of ride through. No cars, very not crowded, pops you onto the path, circles you up to the lighthouse, no problem. So it is a little weird. The problem when you get into RideSpot here is that now if I want to get turn-by-turn directions for this, you actually have to like export a GPX maps file. So you don't have the ease of Google Maps just hitting go. You have to get this either onto your phone somehow, or to get it onto like a cycling computer if you have one. And that's a thing that, you know, if you're using the paid versions of Strava or RideWithGPS, they have the turn-by-turn stuff just built in. You don't have to do any kind of file transfer. But expanding with this, one of the nice things that you can kind of do with RideSpot is, so let's say from there, it's a Sunday, we want to like go all the way out to Palos
That's all I
Verdes.
got.
Let's hit
Please
another
ride safe.
lighthouse.
Wear your helmet.
You can go to Point
Wear your
Vicente.
helmet.
You can just click, and it'll, just like Google Maps and everything, will give you an entire route like this. All these little flags are just corresponding to the turns that you're going to have to make over here. And so this is where, if you're familiar with Long Beach and you know where you're riding, like if you've never ridden out there before, you might look at this and be like, okay, perfect. There aren't very many turns. But maybe you're more familiar with, like, say, San Pedro here, and you're like, I wouldn't necessarily make these turns. I might use other streets. That's where you can go in and you can actually make decisions, drag things over if you want. You also might, sometimes it's a hybrid. I'll build things on RideSpot or on Strava and get to a point where, like, when I get here, I'll know generally what to do. So I'm just going to ignore these turns and I'm going to kind of follow my gut until I know that, okay, I need to end up on 25th. So whatever I do, maybe you go, you know, whatever. There's a bunch of different options you can kind of choose. A nice feature here that RideSpot has, that I know RideWithGPS doesn't have integrated as well. I'm not sure if Strava has it, but is this toggle to turn on bike paths. Because if you were trying to make a decision of what to do here, you can actually see that it's making decisions to keep you on these highlighted green bike paths. The dotted ones are an unprotected lane usually, and the solid green are an actual protected bike lane. So that can really help you navigate even some spots, you know, like right around the hub. You can see Long Beach's, I mean, one, impressive bike infrastructure. You can see the streets that, like 3rd and Broadway, that might be good. You can see what we're talking about with 7th Street. No bike lanes on 7th Street. Yeah. So it gives you a pretty easy visual when you're trying to build something from scratch. And so again, it is that extra work, you know, you might need to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on how long your ride is, you know, sitting and actually coming up with a way to go. But for example, this is nice. If you haven't ever ridden over in Palos Verdes, really cool to kind of see, oh, look, there's this, Hawthorne has a great bike lane the entire way. So let's ride down Hawthorne and add that as a thing. And then, you know, however you want to go, you can kind of use this as a visual to help make your routes. Again, it's totally subjective. And like, honestly, the best way is to just get experience. Try one the first time. Obviously, make sure you're safe. Don't feel like you have to follow the directions if it takes you to an intersection or a street that you don't feel comfortable riding on.
Or tells you to walk across the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. Or it tells you to walk. Like,
don't do it.
I'm telling you, man. Don't, like, what? Why? So yeah, obviously, if it's trying to tell you stuff like that, you can note it, and then the next time you're going to go out for a ride like that, you hop on your computer and maybe go over to RideSpot or ask a friend how they navigate that area. One thing we want to make sure we really kind of drive home is that the unfortunate reality is that there isn't a way to build a perfect bike route because of the state of bicycle infrastructure. In a perfect world, there's bike lanes all across town. You can get anywhere you need to go, and the apps aren't giving you silly things like this where you go across the ocean. But unfortunately, you're often going to have to make a decision between, like, well, either we're going to have to go up a really steep hill, or we're going to have to go on a busy street to kind of get where I want to go. Or maybe you have to ride like 10 miles out of the way if you don't want to do either of those things. And that isn't really a fault of route building. It's a fault of bicycle infrastructure not being 100% developed there yet.
Just to add on to that, Aaron and I have actually been contacted by parents and people connected to schools asking us to do classes on route building. So that was kind of what helped, inspire this class, was that there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, I want my kids to ride their bike to school. It'll save me a lot of time taking them to school. But there's, issues with where the bike lanes, what roads are safe for them to ride on. And so Aaron said a lot of this is infrastructure. We need to make it easier for parents to see where their kids can go. And, fortunately, we get to work with the city. So that's a lot of stuff that we talk about, is how can we increase the availability of routes for children. So, obviously you need more bike lanes around schools. You need more bike lanes around places like, obviously we have some on 4th Street and stuff like that, but we need to expand those to where you can go from home to work to restaurant and back home with really ever having to break off of a bike lane. That would be ideal, to keep people constantly on their bikes and keep it safe for everybody of all ages and all riding skill as well.
Totally. Couldn't have said it better. But yeah, I guess we want to hear from you guys as always. If you're in the future watching it on YouTube, drop a comment. We do check those. They will inform our future classes, even if it's 2025 and you finally came across this route building class. I hope we're still checking the comments in 2025. I don't know. Maybe YouTube won't be a thing in 2025. I'm not gonna make any guesses, but yeah, we want to hear from you guys, and what are the challenges that you're facing with route building, and what kind of solutions can we kind of come together as a cycling community and put forward, whether that is just informing the city and trying to get more bike lanes built, or whether that's making people aware of the bike infrastructure that already exists. But yeah, that's all I got. Jasmine, Justin.
That's all I got. Please ride safe. Wear your helmet.
Yeah.
Wear your helmet.
Indeed.